Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Kerbs IndyCar podcast. I'm your host, Nate Woods, and I'm joined again by my host, Thiemo Albers-Daly. Thiemo, how are we doing?
Just about recovered from that one. I'm glad, as I said to you just before we started recording, that we are slightly delayed on our podcast review for this because I think that was quite chaotic. But it did it for me in a lot of ways, didn't do it for you in a lot of ways. But I think combined, we got some enjoyment out of it, and it was a very interesting way to conclude the very, 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 very long month of May. How are you?
Yeah, of course, we're talking about the Indianapolis 500 that ran this past weekend, and a race that, of course, I did get to go to, um, living living here in Indianapolis, and of course, you got to experience at 6 o'clock in the evening local time there, I believe.
Yeah, once it kicked off, yeah, it worked surprisingly well. I was cautious of timing being as good as it was because we had the Monaco Grand Prix, and normally when I try and line those two up, one of them goes a bit awry. You had the IndyCar obviously going awry last year with the delay. You had Monaco the year before, so it doesn't usually work out. But this year it worked pretty well on the timing, and I could have a little break and get straight into the IndyCar, and I had a little break again, and I went to then sit down and watch the Coca-Cola 600. I got 70 laps in, fell asleep. But you know
Well,
what? Tried.
at least you got to see part of the Coca-Cola 600. Here in America, it's on Amazon Prime, and
Of course,
if you
yes.
if you don't have Amazon Prime, you weren't seeing the race. And
One of four
I
races that they randomly have on there for
yeah
reasons that aren't quite clear.
yeah I pay $85 for F1 TV a year, and that's my only subscription service. So
Hey, 85 bucks for F1, I'd take that over the prices that you have to pay for Sky over here. So I need to figure out a way of making that happen.
so yeah, the 500 this year was as I described, I think when we were kind of messaging back and forth during the race, uh, was a goofy one. Uh, this was my 35th Indy 500, and I think we have to go back to around 1995 to find one that was as goofy of a race as this one.
I was
Um,
just thinking in
it-
terms of viewing, you're a Scott Dixon here, and I'm maybe a David Malukas. We're at very different stages of our Indy 500 careers.
yeah, and uh, the it was cold. It was this was the coldest 500 since uh 1995, I believe.
Ooh,
And
I say.
yeah, I mean the air temperature 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Uh it was drizzling at the beginning of the race, so that delayed the race
Hmm.
by about 25, 30 minutes. Track temperature was like 75 degrees,
I'm
which
saying, yeah, which isn't much when I convert it back to what I know as well. I'm like 75 in America is not good for that kind
no,
of thing.
no. And uh it just it wasn't miserable, but it was sitting in I sat in the top row. We were talking before the race or before the podcast started. I sat in the very, very top row of turn two, up in the deck and up where the TV cameras are. And
I did
my
try and spot
daughter,
you. I didn't have any luck.
well, my daughter kept saying, "Oh, we'll get on the Jumbotron," and I was like, "We're not. There's 350,000 people here. We are not going to get on the Jumbotron, sweetie."
She might have meant you were going to climb on it at some point.
Well, and watching the replays of the race, I kept looking to see where, are we, or can I see me in the background, or are we up
Hmm.
there? So, but yeah, I mean, just all around, just from the start of the race,
So not even the start. Like you say, we couldn't even get to the start
yeah,
before we had
we couldn't even
issues,
get
you
to that
know? I
part.
mean, you said we had the rain just kind of hovering about. It was a very isolated bit of rain, but that was good ultimately because it meant we weren't sitting around twiddling our thumbs for ages and you weren't freezing to death on top of turn two. But then, and say, Team Penske, if we're going to just go straight into team by team analysis, unfortunately, for once when we talk about them at the start, it's yet again a case of
Yeah, we thought we had the one driver that with Penske that was not penalized and sent to the rear of the
Yeah,
field. Uh, Scott McLaughlin crashing on the formation lap.
yeah,
Um,
and just such a. I mean, I've watched the replay a good few times, and it was barely anything. The movements. You can't even criticize him for anything really, because he was
yeah.
just going through the motions. It could have happened to anyone, but of course, it had to happen to him. On top of the Penske drama as it is, and on top of the fact that there's this. Well, I hope one day will turn into a more positive narrative of him doing the Indy 500 in this yellow submarine. Well, it's not a good color for a submarine. It's not working. It's not bringing you any good luck. Just bam, crash,
Well,
wallop, and then just gut wrenching, seeing him just crouching on the grass by the car and going, don't, yeah, that's just it. I think the commentators were saying it's kind of one of the worst feelings you can have as a race car driver.
yeah, if that would have happened 300 yards further down the track, he would have been past the pit wall, and
Mhm.
he would have just spun into the grass, and you know
Could have made it out.
would have made it back onto the track, and yeah, they would have had to run a few more laps under caution, but and then reform the field, but he would have continued his day. But uh, wanted to see. I got a trivia question for you. I know that you're not as big of a fan, or as
Not as
long of
well
a fan
versed
as
of
I
a
am.
fan.
Yeah, yeah. You're not as versed as a fan, but when was the last time, and who was the driver that crashed on a formation lap before the race started?
Ooh. The way you say that makes me think it should be recent enough for me to know it. And at the same
Well, let
time,
me.
this could also be
I,
some random
it
thing you pulled out
it
from
it
1984.
happened. It happened before you were born, but I think they probably would have mentioned it on the broadcast because it doesn't happen very often.
Oh, the way you said it then about the mission broadcaster is tickling a memory now, and I'm like, oh no, I can't remember the driver in question. But you saying it happened so long ago, yeah, I can't think off the top of my head who that would
Uh,
have been.
I'm almost certain it was 95. Roberto Guerrero crashed from the pole.
Ooh, even more
Yeah,
gut wrenching. I mean, at
yeah,
least Scotty Mack wasn't starting from there. But oh,
yeah,
that'd have been the worst way for Schwartzman to go. I mean, I know
yeah.
it didn't exactly go his way for the rest of the race, but that would have been a much worse way of doing things, I think. But Roberto Carrera, I shall remember that from
Yeah.
now on, and I shall pass that forward and annoy someone else with that later.
But one thing that Scott McLaughlin has over Roberto Guerrero is Scott McLaughlin did not finish last, even though he was the first car
Did
out,
find that amusing when I was putting the
crashing.
results together.
Yeah, finishes uh, in 30th place due to
Which, you
penalties
know,
that we will get to.
I don't know if it'll make him feel any better, but it might make him smirk just for a second
Yeah.
and go, I don't know how I managed that.
Well, and I don't have the prize list in front of me, and I don't know whether they published it this year or not. In the past, they would announce how much each driver won at the victory banquet,
Hmm.
and I would venture to guess that Ericsson, Kirkwood, and Eilot, who finished behind him, received a bigger check because they completed all 200 laps.
Yeah, which again, some of the weird and wacky and alright goofiness that, like you say, from this year's Indy 500. That is how you sum up. Why is it goofy? This is the reason why. This is
This
one
is
of the reasons
why.
why.
And yeah, it just started, just kicked off the whole goofiness of the day, I think.
I'd say it
Having
started as
some,
it meant to go on. Then,
yeah. So,
and
uh, but yeah, I mean, the other drivers that Penske had starting in the back and making moves.
it looked good for a bit, to be honest. I mean, Power wasn't making as much progress as we maybe hoped or expected, especially in comparison to Newgarden. But he was following Newgarden up, and Newgarden was on an absolute tear. And we weren't even halfway up, and I think he was already in the top 10. And we're going,
Yeah.
my days, he is going to do this again somehow. Um, and if it weren't for the car essentially taking him out of the equation, I reckon he would have made it 3 for 3. Gutting for him as well, because obviously the progress was phenomenal up to that point. I don't know what the hell he had in that car, which is keep the comments going mad. So we could tell you what he's probably got in that car that he's not meant to have. But you can't help but be impressed by that. And I think despite the fact that he only finished in what 16th for willpower. Getting to there from the back still isn't too shabby, especially in a race that was filled with cautions and chaos and all kinds of just wackiness. So definitely not the 500 he would have wanted, but all things considered, not too bad. It's just a
Yeah,
shame that overall for a team, it was just another incredibly messy weekend, and they didn't do what they did last year. And okay, we started the season terribly, and now the 500 is where we start fighting back. That didn't
yeah,
happen this year.
yeah. Definitely is going to give a different feel to the 500 museum. I think for the coming year, won't be an all
This will be
Penske
where you
affair.
see a big curtain around going display closed for renovations.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Newgarden, he looked like, I mean, he just coming up through the field, every pit cycle, he was getting closer and closer. You're like,
Hmm.
he might do this. He's going to be in the top five soon, and he's going to be running with those front runners. And I mean, we knew going into the day that he had such a strong car. I mean, he was the fastest car on
If
Fast
anyone was going
Friday.
to be able to do it, it would be
Yeah,
him. But you still didn't
yeah,
think he would then go and do it. You know, it's one thing to talk about and have the potential for it, but then you usually see something go wrong, and okay, something did, but up to that
yeah,
point,
yeah.
it wasn't
And
anything he did wrong. It was just the car. It was the circumstances, and you go normally it's a little bit like power. Oh, what can he do from the back? And okay, a respectable drive up through the field, but it's not what we kind of were dreaming of. But then you go and goes, well, I'll do that then.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, all in all, I think that was a difficult day for Penske, but I think in a lot of fans' eyes was just. I think it was
Yeah,
just deserved.
it felt
Uh,
a little bit like playing a game of football, absolutely smacking the ball, then it bounces off something and just comes back and hits you right in the face.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, I don't know how you recover from a month like they've had.
Alcohol.
Yeah, I mean they've got some job postings available for certain.
I think we should apply now. I think we could do an alright job of that. It can't go any worse than the last couple of people.
I tell you, the job that I'm going to apply for is some of these vacant um tech inspection roles because I think there's been just as many firings there, or if not, there
Yeah,
should be. And that's one thing. I think this is a good time as any to talk about the the tech inspector program with IndyCar. Uh, I mean, this has
yeah, rough
been.
time to be in charge of that, isn't it?
I mean, you caught two car, Power and Newgarden. You caught them during qualifying and relegated them to start in the back, and then you would think that, oh, well, we found evidence that Newgarden had this modification on his car last year because it's sitting in the museum for everybody to see with that modification on it.
Hmm.
How many other times did that car roll through a tech line and not get caught with that modification?
But
And
that was the thing I was thinking about the whole time is like, were the rules just somewhat different? Is it in that kind of grey area as we discussed after the qualifying sessions that sometimes it would be acceptable, sometimes it not, but as a rule, nothing was made of it. But if that was the case, then why did that change now? Or were they all just incompetent every single time and somehow someone comes to the wrong one? This thing here, what's that about? No one's
well,
picked up on it.
yeah, and then all of a sudden after the race, in post-race inspections, you get three more drivers that get, essentially disqualified.
Yeah.
Uh, and why weren't those? I mean, you would think after the inspectors missing the Penske problem
You think they'd be even
for
more
a
on it?
year, they'd be a little bit more on it. And then you have three drivers, not back markers. These are all three guys that finished in the top 15, including the second place finisher
Which I'm
getting,
so glad he didn't win now because that would have been even more brutal to wake up on Monday and go, oh, for God's sake,
well,
what?
David Land, I watched an interview this morning. He published a video last night where he interviewed Alex Palou and asked him, would you still feel the same about your Indy 500 victory if you had finished second behind Marcus Ericsson and then he get disqualified?
Hmm.
And uh, I think he gave a very diplomatic answer, but you could tell that he would have been just fine winning it either way that he could.
Yeah, I do get that. I think it'd be maybe just for me, I don't know, but less satisfaction because you want to win it on track as a racing driver, I think. But at the same time, a win is a win. I suppose it's the nature of how you receive it, and at least it would be, in this case, a fairly legitimate reason for penalty or disqualification instead of it being something a little bit vague and odd, you know. I think back to Formula One, I think last year when George Russell got disqualified from the Belgian Grand Prix. Okay, it was a rule breach because of the floor, I think, on that occasion
Mhm.
being ever so slightly too worn. And I think that's not a way I want to win it because that feels like that's the fault of the rules rather than the fault of the
Yeah.
team and the car. Um, but in this instance, mm, plus you've got the interestingly vague um, other things that they got noted for, which I'm trying to think of the wording now, but
Conduct outside of IndyCar's decorum or whatever, you know. Yeah.
yeah, they didn't behave in a proper way. But in the writing of that, it just told you the generalities of what that could mean. It didn't specify anything, so everyone's then left scratching their heads going, was this just an extra thing in reaction to finding out that they've been disqualified, or was this something that happened during the race? What
Yeah.
happened
It's
here? That we
like,
won't
yeah.
know.
And like I mentioned when we were talking about it before, it's like it's probably because they were cursing at the race director for finding out that they weren't finishing second place.
I hope it would be that'd be what it was, but I just again wish you could have just said that if that was indeed what it was. But I mean, we might as well talk about Andretti. Just quickly skip over McLaren and go back to them in a second, as we're
Yeah.
essentially on them. Kirkwood and Ericsson, like you say, had done pretty well up to that point, um, especially by kind of recent standards. And you thought Ericsson, oh, interesting. This is the driver that's going to come up and take it to below. This is the new hope that we have, and
Yeah.
ultimately, probably quite a good thing that that didn't happen. Meanwhile, Carlton Herta, I think him and Fernando Alonso have just found a support club at this point because they are just two unlucky drivers.
The fact that Colton Herta only finished one lap down is somewhat surprising to me. As many times as he was on pit road, I've got the pit reports here. Let's see how many pit stops he had. Let's see.
Were there more caution flags or more pit stops?
That's a good question. Let's see here. No, Colton Herta had more stops than cautions.
Dear Lord, I made that as a joke. I didn't actually expect that to be right.
Yeah, he had 10 pit stops.
Bloody hell.
More
How
than
was
any
he
other
only a lap
driver.
down?
Yeah. So five of the pit stops were under caution and five of them were under green flag. Um, and I
Just to
think
get
that's
that balance.
probably what helped him. I mean, drivers, essentially for the most part had to make, you know, five stops to get through the race. And so,
You know,
to
I
have
might make him
five
my
under
winner
green, it's
now
not.
after all that.
But yeah, it was every time I looked up, it seemed like he was coming off pit road in front of me. And I'm like,
So
why
is
is
this
he?
is this a replay? No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. So,
Wait, I'm here in person. This isn't on TV. What am I seeing? Why is he there?
yeah. And uh, but yeah, Kirkwood and Erickson both getting penalized after the race and relegating back to 31st and 32nd place. And yeah, so I
The,
looked up the rules infraction. It was improper conduct.
that's the phrase I was looking for.
Any member attempting to or engaging in unsportsmanlike conduct, unsafe conduct, or conduct detrimental to racing on
You
or
feel
off the
like they
track.
I like the idea of Ericsson and Kirkwood going to a bar after they find out about this news, and they just see Howard and Newgarden sitting at the bar already and going, first time.
Yeah, they kind of did the Uno reverse with Penske as far as starting
Mm.
order and finishing order.
Not that it worked out
Didn't
pretty
they?
well for either team on that front overall. It was kind of,
Yeah,
we both got to
yeah,
the same destination. Pretty
yeah,
bad destination, but we found different ways to
yeah,
get here.
yeah. But McLaren, um,
Slightly more positive. It's a weird one because I think for the most part, we didn't really, well, I mean, you had to have seen more of them because you were physically there, but we didn't see an awful lot of them, and it seems such a an award and a McLaren thing in some ways, this race for this season, because all of that effort for Award to essentially finish where he started. Um, and then again, good from both Lundgaard and Siegel. The latter was probably a little bit higher up than any of us expected him to be, but
yeah,
given what was happening in this race, perhaps
yes,
not too surprising. But overall, I think the biggest take with me was just how anonymous a race they all had.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Pato Award. Once the race finally got started, uh, overtook both Takuma Sato and Schwartzman um, to lead the race, lap 9 and 10, um, which was essentially the start of the race after we had uh, uh,
Marco and Scott.
Marco and Scott having their incidents to start the race. The essential start of the race was lap 9, and so him taking the lead, we thought, well, this could be Pato's day. This could be it. And then 2 laps later, Takuma
I
Sato
definitely
just
didn't think that. I was like, this is too early to call. He's peaked way too soon.
and,
This
and
ain't gonna
it turned
happen.
out, even though he finished third where he started, those 2 laps were the only laps that he led the entire race. And so he was within sniffing distance there at the end. And it's like,
He's destined to be the bridesmaid, never the bride, isn't he?
it's a possibility. Yeah, very much a possibility for him. But yeah, Christian Lundgaard was a driver that really didn't get any love on the broadcast, I feel like. You know, didn't lead any
Like,
laps, stayed out of
well, yeah,
trouble, wasn't in frame when the other accidents happened.
like I say, he's the first driver on this list, and there are quite a few, I think, where looking at the results and going, I have watched this race quite closely. How the hell did you finish where you did?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's a kind of even without penalties, all the drivers that are on this list that we'll get to, they all still would have finished pretty decently. So I'm just there going, like, again, I watched this. I was kind of one, I was permanently on the timing tower to see the movement of people to see
mm.
could various drivers get a bit closer. What were they doing? I don't know how the hell you managed to do this. It's kind of my eyes are glazed over you. I don't know.
Nolan Siegel. The people that weren't at the track watching probably missed his last lap theatrics. Uh,
Yes.
Well, he had a great day going, still finished where he probably would have, 13th place, but crashed coming out of turn two on the last lap. And of course, TV cameras were trained on the, the Alex Pillow show. And so I think viewers at home probably missed it. And from what I understand, they didn't show any replays. And um,
Yeah,
th-
I didn't know it was him that crashed first of all, and then obviously after the race, completely forgot about it and thought and didn't think anything more of it. I kind of in the back of my mind, I'll find out who crashed at some point. And then I was scrolling through social media yesterday at some point when I was making the notes up for this because I already put him down as P13 on the notes at that point. And I saw this reel, this clip from the race of him crashing. Wait, what? He crashed? When did this happen? Again, I was watching this. What are we doing? And I was like, oh, that was the one. That's the unseen crash. That was what all that was about. I understand now.
it was a hard hit. I mean, it was one that you felt. And uh, I honestly, I missed it as well. I heard it and then
What's
looked.
your excuse?
I was watching the Jumbotron for the
Ah,
finish of the race. My daughter saw it and she's like, "Oh, there's a car that crashed." I'm
finally.
like, as I look over and there's this car rolling down the backstretch. So, yeah, but I mean, obviously P13 still a great finish for them, even though they're not going to be able to use that car again. I don't think. So,
Probably
um,
not.
yeah, but yeah, Chip Ganassi Racing. We got
But reverting back to last year's spec of performances, I feel like of let's all look at Alex below. Let's not focus on everyone else in the team. There's nothing to see back here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, obviously, starting sixth, finishing first is the only driver that didn't gain any positions from post-race penalties.
Yeah, I mean he did it finally, and I will stress that as inevitable as it may have been, you also can't fault him. And as I said in our qualifying review, this doesn't mean that the season's over yet. We have plans for this. Um,
Yeah, I want to say
it's not
that
looking good, I admit.
it is our responsibility as journalists for this series to keep the hype train going and making sure people understand, hey, the season's not over yet. There's still mathematical chances all over the place for drivers to catch up. He's now 112 points ahead, which is over two full races.
Yeah,
Um,
the one interesting thing I saw for that, and then the amusing thing I saw as a result of that was that the gap between first and second is the same gap between second and 19th. And Scott Dixon, I think, said to him during the banquet, I did see the one clip of I've bought you and your family a nice 5 week vacation. And
yes.
whoever the presenter was like, he'll come back and he'll probably still be in the lead of the championship. Okay,
Yeah.
he's probably more right than he realizes.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And it just he was in the right place at the right time. I mean, he only led 14 laps and it was the last 14. And
You'd rather lead the last 14 than the
that's
first three.
that's right. That 14th lap that he led is the one that you need to lead. So um yeah, I mean, great day for him. And I don't want to poo-poo him for his win, but
But
we're treading into a territory now where it feels reminiscent of Max Verstappen's season that he had, where
in
he went out
23,
and
yeah.
won, yeah, in 23, where he won every race, and if he wasn't winning the race, it was he
Second
was
or
right
third.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was on the podium, and um, if you're a Max Verstappen fan, that makes for an awesome season. But if you're not a Max Verstappen fan, then that was the most painful thing that
Or if you're just a neutral fan that doesn't mind a
yeah,
little bit,
casual
but the
fan.
same thing
Yeah,
every now and again is going to get annoying.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And it just we're in that territory now. And if you're not an Alex Palou fan, is this now becoming detrimental to the series to
I
have
think
a a dominant drive, such a dominant drive as this?
I think the only saving grace for me at the moment is that I'm still sort of fresh in the Grand IndyCar pantheon of
Mhm.
experience,
Mhm.
and I don't know him well enough to dislike him for anything in particular. He's
Mhm.
not done anything to aggravate me. He's been impressive. Yes, it's frustrating, like you say, because I want to see what I'm used to with IndyCar, which is the
Mhm.
opposite of domination.
Yeah.
Um, I obviously started watching IndyCar loosely in 22, and then 23 was I think the first or second full season I watched it, which was a brilliant contrast to the F1 23 season, as we just mentioned there. Um, and now I feel like I'm getting the reverse Uno card played on me now, and I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, we saw something similar to this in NASCAR back in the 2000s and the 2010s with Jimmy Johnson.
Mm,
Um, just, seven championships and, that's a different series, a different product on track than IndyCar. Um, but
in
yeah, to
domination
have
anywhere, if it gets too much of that, it's
you
gonna
get too
grate on
much
you.
too much domination. can be detrimental to a series. And we definitely saw that in NASCAR. I feel like F1, the fan base is different. I feel like in F1, because uh, a lot of times you have a team that you root for and not necessarily a driver. Um, and uh, from some aspects, I think that's
I think
better.
that is
It
definitely
helps,
true.
but
Yeah.
because you still go out and win, 16 out of 20 races in F1 in a season, and your team still not win the championship because if your other driver, not going to point any fingers, but if the
I'll
other
happily do
driver
it.
if the other driver can't perform on track, then we're seeing that this season as well, but in F1. But I digress. But yeah, just we thought that we were going to get this kind of reprieve from the Alex Palou show when we got to the ovals, because it's like, oh, he's not that great on ovals. He's never won on ovals. And then we go to the first oval of the season and he goes out and wins. And it's like,
It
okay,
it was the perfect storm for it as well. We had changing conditions. We had a bunch of one-shot wonders coming in to upset the apple cart. You had Schwartzman, which admittedly we knew he wasn't going to win, but you had him on pole to switch things
mhm,
up. You had
yeah.
some of these wild one-shots up there at points for much longer than we thought they would be. We had Newgarden powering through the field to come and clinch it from him if anyone was going to, and happily take on that villainous role again. And Dixon had qualified well for once. I'll get to him in a minute because I'm still annoyed with him. And none of it worked. And you go, what the hell do we have to do again? But I don't know what. We tried so many scenarios here. None of them worked. Now I need to don't even have that long to figure it out because Detroit's
Mhm.
right around the corner.
Yeah.
Um, but the point I want to make on Dixon is that he listened to me, sort of. He finally qualified well, as we mentioned in the Indy 500 qualifying review episode that we did. But then he went and finished in 20th. And
Yeah.
I take a little bit of responsibility for it because I did say he might win it, so I may have cursed him a little. But at the same time, God damn it, Scott Dixon, what are you doing to me? You're making it very hard for me to be a fan at the moment of you when I'm rooting for him so hard. Again, I'm getting zero returns.
He was running at the end of the race, so that's a silver lining.
I mean, geez, is that what it's come to?
3 laps down, but still
Colton Herta was
running.
less laps down.
Let's see. How many pit stops did he make? He had quite a few, didn't he? Uh,
Something tells me this won't make me feel better.
Probably not. He also had 10.
I mean, yeah, and still down. I don't
But
know what I'm
but
supposed to do with
but
this.
only three green flag stops for him. 7 of them were under caution.
It didn't help.
Well, interesting thing about Scott Dixon is, and I know that they highlighted during the broadcast, but during the warm-up laps, and when he had the brake caliper issue on the left rear of his car, we could smell it as he would go by from the top
That's
row.
that's not a good sign.
He went by the first lap, he went by, and we smelled it, and we're like, that's not exhaust smell. That's somebody's having an issue. And then the next lap he went by, we could see fire from the back of the car. And like, he's not going to be able to start the race. And then the next lap he went by, you could see, I mean, the brake caliper was just glowing red. I mean, the whole assembly was just lava red. And we're like, I mean, how he was still running at the end of the race is beyond me. And how they were able to overcome that kind of an issue, I think, 3 laps down is a win for them based on the issues that he had before the race even started.
You say this, and I sympathise, but I still feel like Rowan Atkinson in the watching the F1 from the Mercedes garage, just constantly, just constantly contorted, twisted face, going, none of this is going the way it should be.
Yeah, and Kiffin Simpson, just to highlight him, having um, contact and just kind
Yeah,
of was kind of a non non-starter. I mean, the only time they really highlighted him, I think, during the broadcast was probably during the accident. That
Unfortunately for
was
him, yeah.
no fault of his own. Yeah, I mean, Kyle Larson just, got too
I was going to say
low, lost
it
control,
was as
and
if it was one of those
collected
things,
him.
wasn't it, where if he a little bit like Larson's crash later in NASCAR, if he'd just been a smidge further over,
Yep.
could have avoided the whole thing. But it
Mhm.
didn't happen, and
Yeah.
kind of karma later in a way for Larson, as much as he wouldn't have wanted that to be the case, because kind of what happened in IndyCar didn't happen to him in NASCAR.
Right. So one team that I think had the best day out of any team, AJ Foyt Racing. Uh,
Wow.
I
Man,
mean, this was
what
a
a
team
result.
that at the beginning of the season, I finally feel like we're vindicated because
God
there's
bless.
at the beginning of the season, we said, this is the team to watch. Maybe not on the road courses so much, but once we get to the oval part of the season, this is going to be the team that's going to shock everybody. And I finally feel vindicated in that statement.
Rightly
uh,
so.
yeah, I mean, Santino Ferrucci, an amazing month. He started 15th, but finished top five, fifth place, and then David Malukas. You know, awesome drive
These
for
are another
him.
two of the drivers where I was like, how the hell did they get there? But I'm so happy for it.
Yeah, I mean, David Malukas, he was one position out of making the fast six on pole
Mm.
day. And so we knew that he had a fast car and was capable of getting around the track. And if anybody has can be vindicated, it's David Malukas after not the way that he missed the show last year, uh, you know, and uh, with the with broken wrist and everything, it was just coming back and finishing second. It's just amazing for him. And post race interviews with him and what I was listening to, like I think it was interview with him and Marshall Pruitt. Um, talking about, he's like, I'm only 23 years old. I've got plenty of time to come back and win this. He almost didn't feel like he missed out. Like it was, he was so upbeat with, I mean, at the time of the interview, finishing third.
Mm.
But
Again, it's
uh,
that classic thing of the person celebrating second place is happier than the person in first almost because they just were so
yeah, he's
unlikely
like,
to be there in the first
yeah,
place.
and he's like, he's like, I'm only 23. I got plenty of years to figure this out and get that win. And so, I mean, for that team to come in and do what they did in the 500, I think, kind of puts them on the map for people. You know,
Mm.
Neither one of these drivers are going to be contesting for a championship this year, but
That's right.
still, I mean, you've got um,
But I
David
think
Lucas.
that's the point, right? That we didn't expect them to be anyway. So when we see them up
Yeah,
in these higher echelons, then we're just happy
yeah,
about it because it means they're making finally that step in the right direction. We're kind of watching them take it to the big guns, as it were. And if they can finish ahead of a bunch of them, which they did this weekend, then it's it's a little bit like Williams. You're not expecting anything anyway because we're so used to them being further down the order. So we'll take it for as long as we can get. And if you can stave off people that have more resources and more of everything, then well done to you. We're going to love to see that. And it
yeah.
just reminded me that the whole time of seeing them afterwards, when even more when it was found out that they obviously get to go ahead of position as well. That there's a quote in Zack Snyder's Justice League of they said the age of heroes would never come again. I'm like, yeah, we got some new heroes to play with, baby.
And Lucas led 2 laps. It was during pit sequencing, but and Ferrucci didn't lead any laps. But to have both of those drivers finish in the top five with only 2 laps led is pretty crazy as well. But
Yeah.
I'm going to make a bold prediction,
Oh,
and I made this prediction, with this team at the beginning of the season, or made a bold prediction, and now we're starting to see it. I think one of these drivers could win a race this year.
you know what? Not honestly, is it old? Is it not? I want to see it. It's
It, and you,
ooh,
you take into consideration like Alex Palou has won 5 out of 6
Well,
races.
yes, that was the point. I was like, on the one hand, but on the other
Yeah,
hand,
yeah. And that's why it's a
it's it's
bold prediction.
it's bold, but I could see it happening in the same way that at the start of the year, if you'd said who's going to be the one driver to beat Palou up to and including the Indy 500, you wouldn't have chosen Carl Kirkwood. So if you were to choose a team in some
Right.
ways, you wouldn't think it would be either of these two drivers. Nothing against them. It's just there's so many other ones that you'd expect to be ahead of them on that list. So yeah, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Another driver we maybe did not expect to finish as high as he did was Connor Daly with Juncos Hollinger Racing.
Oh, it looked like it was on like Donkey Kong for a minute there for him, didn't it?
Yeah.
He was running so well, and the crowd, every time he would be coming around certain parts of the track, you could genuinely hear them. I mean, obviously, you could hear them because you were there and
Yes.
you were probably doing it with the crowd. But
Yeah.
on the broadcast, you could hear it and you go, "Oh, that's something." Um, and I mean, yeah, on the one hand, you look at it and you go P8. You know what, actually, you can't look at that any other way. That is just good. It's obviously frustrating that he couldn't get higher up, considering where he was at points. But again, you'd
Yeah.
have taken P8 at the start of that.
Yeah. And it just, he led 13 laps and it was on track. It wasn't, you know, somebody pitted in front of him and he took over the lead and was able to just coast around. I mean, he was doing it on merit. And
Going for it.
yeah, and of course, it's been over 70 years since a local driver has won the 500. And so anytime the local boy is out front, the crowd's going to get excited. So,
It's Connor Daly, the new Charles Leclerc.
yeah. So, but Stingray Rob, unfortunate for him, finishing
Yeah,
23rd. Also, a victim of the Kyle Larson accident. And that was a hard
nothing he
hit.
did wrong. Yeah,
I don't know if
just
you saw
bad,
the
bad
the
place.
the the in-car camera replay on that.
Yeah,
Ooh, that was a tough one, and it was one they replayed it on the jumbotron
you heard the
at the
crowd then, I
track,
imagine, as
and the
well.
crowd, the whole 350,000 people going, oh, all at the same time. It just, oh, it was a hard hit. It was a scary accident. Um, I'm glad that he was okay. I mean, that could have definitely been a lot worse than what it was, and uh, yeah. So, I mean, I think all in all, Stingray Rob can walk away knowing that, I mean, he, when he first arrived on the scene in IndyCar, 3 years ago, he was kind of I don't want to say laughing stock of the series, but he was the driver that you expected to finish outside of the
And the
top
back.
20
Yeah.
in every single race. And,
Mhm.
uh, when there's only 24, 25 cars in the series, and you're like, okay, yeah, he's going to finish either 24th or 25th. And,
It's going to be consistent, but not in the way anyone wants it to be.
yeah, and now we're starting to see where, he's not that driver finishing outside of the top 20. He did finish 23rd in this race, but to no
Through no
fault
fault
of
of
his
his own.
own. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think he's a driver that I think with a few more years of experience could be a solid mid-pack driver. I don't know if he'll ever be at the caliber of Alex Palou or Scott Dixon, but um, it's been kind of
I'd go for say he won't be, but I don't think that's a bad thing. You need these drivers a little bit, and I keep making F1. I said this the other day when I was recording the Monaco review. I keep making F1 analogies in the IndyCar podcast and IndyCar analogies in the F1 podcast. I'm really not getting the right way around, but he strikes me as a bit of a Pierre Gasly or an Esteban Ocon sort of
mm,
driver of he'll be in the right place at the right time least a few times, and he might be able to convert one or two of them into a win or a podium. And it's going to be great because that's the kind of thing we love to see. And not every driver needs to be championship potential or kind of like Polo godlike potential as a driver, but we need those kind of drivers in there to keep it spicy, to keep it interesting, to go. That's the kind of story we like every once in a while to come in there and upset the apple cart, and you go, "How the hell did you win that Grand Prix?" But also, well done.
yeah, yeah. Meyer Shank Racing, kind of a odd day for
It's kind of the
them.
flip. for me on,
Yeah,
on that one.
yeah,
It's kind of if you had one good driver, one bad driver, you had one bad driver and one good driver there for
yeah,
me and Shank.
yeah.
I think
Marcus Armstrong, who, you know, had a lot of, I think he had momentum going into this season, and um, finishing 18th, was still running at the end. He was 2 laps down, kind of was making things hard for some drivers there at the end, but still running, finishing 18th, and then Felix Rosenquist finishing fourth. I think that's another
yeah,
driver that
take a bow was
really didn't wasn't involved in any accidents, wasn't involved in any on-track drama, didn't lead any laps. I think
but
probably flew under the radar for the whole race and ended up getting a top five.
yeah, I mean I spotted his name on the timing when I was looking at it, thankfully, so he wasn't as I wasn't as surprised to see him there as I was with others. But at the same time, I don't know if I expect him to stay there because we know he's more than capable, but he's
Yeah,
just not had the luck on his side for various bits of the season. So for him to be in P4, he's going to be ruined. He couldn't have been in P3
yeah,
or a bit closer with some of those penalties, but P4 is still pretty damn good, and you can't take that away, I think. And I'm glad that that team had something positive to take away from the weekend. I mean, again, we get some of the one-shot drivers in a little bit with who represents them as well, but I think that's probably as good as probably even better than we could have hoped for him.
yeah. Here's an interesting stat line for you. Felix Rosenquist, who is in fourth place in the points right now, has five top 10 finishes on the season and hasn't led a single lap.
I was already amazed that he'd had that many top 10 finishes, to be honest,
Yeah,
because I didn't think he'd had that. Well, again, that kind of shows the season he's been having. It's anonymous, it's better than expected, but also worse than expected.
talk about
You don't know
flying
what
under the
you don't know what to
radar.
do with him. Yeah, jeez,
The only other driver that has in the top 10 in points who hasn't led a lap is Will Power in eighth place. So,
that
uh,
seems on brand for that team this year. Though I'm
yeah,
less
yeah,
surprised at
right,
that one.
right. Um, and that kind of just shows the kind of topsy-turvy season that we've had outside of the Alex Palou show.
Again, you
That
cover that first place up.
Yeah,
It's quite
yeah.
interesting.
Meyer Shank in fourth place in the point standings. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So, um, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. I,
I
I
don't know what to do with this team.
yeah, I'm like that was a pretty good run
Yeah,
for
I
all
mean,
three drivers.
I was looking at the start with Foster and going, you know what, actually, he's probably quite happy with that because even though he finished where he started, I don't think we ever actually expected him to get any higher, and he probably would have been expected to finish lower. And so even with the penalties and all the rest of it going on, he stayed out of it. It's his first Indy 500. Shortman obviously took the biscuit from him with qualifying last weekend, and kind of Foster was kind of the next most impressive rookie after him, and he didn't get enough attention as he should have done, I think. So for him to then come away with another kind of one of these anonymous races, but in perfectly good fashion, is pretty decent. And then Di Francesco as well, just up there. And
Yeah,
you go again, where did you come from? I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, but
Canada, but in this race specifically, where did you come from?
yeah, and those drivers specifically, Foster and DeFrancesco. There were I heard a lot of grumblings after the race about them, in particular, about being out in front of the field on in the last stint of the race in front of the leaders and how that changed the outcome of the race. And it's like IndyCar is unique in the fact that they're not going to throw a blue and yellow flag for a driver that's on the tail end of the lead lap and say, "Hey, get out of the way, the leaders are coming through." IndyCar doesn't do that. And I
Even if they
love
did, I don't think it would have happened. It would
I
have worked.
love it's one of my favorite things about IndyCar in their rule package is if that would have been F1, they would have been
Oh
waving
yeah,
flags on every turn for those drivers to get out of the way.
And the lead
Uh,
drivers have been on the road to go and get these guys out of my way.
right. And in IndyCar, they don't do that. And one of the things that I love about it is, those drivers are out there running their race, and it just so happens their race is right in front of the leaders, and the
I
IndyCar is going to
loved
let
it
them do
because
it.
if you turned on late for whatever reason, very very bloody late,
Mhm.
mind you, you'd have been going, oh my god, Pelo's in third, and these two drivers are just taking the mick out of him in front,
Yeah.
and also
Right.
that's not even the race. There's so
Right.
there's so much going on here, but it's such a fun way of going about it, and I think
Mhm.
yeah, it's something I wish everyone didn't have with their rule system because I think if you are a good enough driver, you will get past them one
Mhm.
way or the other. And if you can't, you can't. But you've got to figure it out yourself. You're not
Well,
at the pinnacle of your respective motorsport series for no reason generally,
yeah.
apart Stroll, but everyone else, and just going, or just get past them. Then. It,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is it's not like Alex Palou was catching the rear bumper and then having to back out.
mm,
I mean, those two
mm.
drivers were legitimately staying out in front of Alex Palou. And it wasn't, you could tell that Alex Palou wasn't being held up by those two drivers because Ericsson couldn't catch him and Malukas couldn't catch him. And I think, Pato Award, I think, was making a little bit of gain at the end on Malukas, but yeah, I mean, I don't feel like it was detrimental at all. Now, the only thing that can be said is, well, if those two cars weren't, splitting the air for Pelot, then, if Pelot was the one having to wedge the air, being the car out in front, that would have made it easier for second place car to catch up. Yes, maybe, but
I don't think it took anything away. I think it just
yeah,
added.
yeah. And I can't fault DeFrancesco and Foster at all, finishing both on the lead lap, 11th and 12th, and Graham Rahal, 17th place, lap down. Um, I think, I mean, that
And he
was,
also had engine issues on Friday during Carb Day,
yeah,
so there might have been something carried over from that wasn't totally sorted out yet. So kind of configured him a little bit there, and also we'll be expecting him to be much higher up anyway. Probably
no,
not.
probably not. Yeah. Another up and down day for Ed Carpenter Racing.
This is not the way around I would have expected these results to be. And this
Yeah.
is Christian
Yeah.
Rasmussen, P6, was another driver go, how the hell did you do that?
Yeah.
I did a double take when I looked at the results page again when I was putting up the Google Doc for us and going, again, I watched this. And yet, I didn't see you during the race pretty much. There were a few bits where we did see you on the broadcast, but at no point did I think, or did I register that you were that far up the grid?
Yeah. Yeah. And, both drivers led laps. I mean, Rasmussen, I think, had what, eight laps led, and Alexander Rossi led 14.
Mad,
Uh,
absolute madness.
yeah.
But I mean, yeah, him and P6 just was not on my bingo card. He kind of snuck in there. I mean, okay, the penalties as well helped him, but even without the penalties, he'd still be top 10.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, to have a driver that far out of the points, I mean, he's moved up to 17th in the points with that top 10. So,
Mm. It's kind of
um,
also the last positive thing we've got to say about the teams collectively before we get to the one-off drivers, because I'm just looking at Dayle, Coyne, and PREMA going, ooh, what do we say about them? I think,
yeah.
it's, I think probably the less said, the better. I mean, the only thing I can say about PREMA is, why set fire to a member of your team or a member of the staff at the track when you can run over them
When
instead?
you can run over him instead. And that was, it's
We got real life Grand Theft Auto 6 before Grand Theft Auto 6.
that is always the scariest things to see out of the track is when a driver has an issue like that on pit road. And coming from the standpoint of somebody who has worked in pits before and has tried out for IndyCar teams, or team, I should say. That is essentially you're having a knife and a dumbbell coming at you at 50 miles per hour, and you got to hope that they steer out of the way. And
So Keanu Reeves at the track is going to get ideas for the next John Wick film if he's not careful. He's like, oh, I've not done that yet.
and Uh, luckily, all those pit crew members were okay. One of them did have to go get checked out for
Hmm.
um, injured foot, but uh, like I said, it's always scary when you see those kind of accidents because those, the drivers, we put so much effort into protecting the drivers, but realistically, when you think about it, there's still very, very little protection outside of fire protection for
Hmm.
pit crew members.
I'll
And
say it's like, oh, setting fires with someone, yeah, perfectly fine. But if we want to run them over, we still can do that. I mean, it's
yeah,
unfortunate. There's not much you
yeah,
can do to combat that.
yeah. And fortunate day for Schwartzman, taking the pole is an amazing feat, and he is rookie of the year, even with a
Hmm.
26th place finish.
Clearly,
Um,
Foster must be seething.
yeah, right. And that's how rookie of the year happens sometimes,
Hmm.
and they can't all be, oh, the rookie went out and finished third, and or the
I mean,
rookie went
again,
out and won the
like I said,
race,
I
and
don't think we ever expect him to finish particularly high up. I mean,
yeah,
look at how it's finished so far this season, but
right,
I don't think we kind of thought it would happen quite so quickly in terms of his sinking down the order.
yeah,
But at the same time, there was then so much else happening during the race that we kind of forgot about him until he then did go and have the pit stop from hell and
mm,
proceeded to retire not long afterwards. So
yeah,
yeah, messy day. But
yeah, and then of course
and then
Cal
then
Milot getting
compounded with
penalized, yeah,
compounded with Idol.
yeah.
So well, we still got
Uh,
one driver. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I mean, 33rd finish, last place for Ilott through his penalty, and then Schwartzman finishing 26th. Honestly, had this not been such a goofy race, I feel like this is probably where they would have ended up in the running
So if this was
order.
any other race weekend, you said that was the result. Like, yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes sense. Yeah. You wouldn't even have to watch the race and be like, oh, that's where I would have figured they would have finished. Yeah. And Dale Coyne Racing, Rinus VK, finishing 27th. Unfortunate problem for him on pit road as well, but able to avoid members of his team anyway.
Bar is low.
Yeah, yeah. So,
But we had some one-shot wonders, obviously, as well, coming in for just
yeah,
the Indy 500. Nick bag in there as well, but I think really it's got to be quite an outstanding effort from Kumasato and also quite impressive from Castro and Evans as well. I mean, bearing in mind Sato is doing this off the back of what was it, a 90G crash he had last month in
yeah,
testing. He then qualifies in second. He also had two broken ribs
right.
and finishes in what, P9 after all
Nine.
that's totally
Yeah,
done. Not too shabby. And I mean, Castro Neves as well. He's also, by the way, Sato 48, Castro Neves 50, both in the top 10, one off race, coming back and going,
yeah,
yeah, let's give this a go, going for a third and a fifth win, respectively. And they
yeah,
do that, and you go, yeah, you know what? Can't be too mad at you.
yeah.
Pretty damn good
Takuma
job, guys.
Sato led the most laps in the race.
Which,
Yeah,
again, is mad.
yeah, 51. I mean, he had the, I would say early on, definitely had the car to beat.
Yeah,
And
I mean, again, it looked like he was going to be the person to take it to
mhm,
below, and I thought this is going to be typical. It's the guy that's here for one race is going to beat
mhm.
the champ, and then obviously he's not going to come back and do this again for the rest of the season because he's only here for the one off, so we can't repeat that trick again. But annoyed it didn't work out. But again, also considered P9 for him and P10 for Castro Neves.
Yeah.
You can't really fault it.
Yeah, Ed Carpenter, obviously the owner of Ed Carpenter Racing, going out. Now this was his 22nd 500, I believe, and going out and finishing 15th, lap down. But um,
Well, decent overall
I,
considering.
yeah, I think he's probably the closest that we would have to a gentleman driver in the 500, I
Hmm.
would say. Somebody that's just going out and running the race because he enjoys it so much. Uh, you know,
Which you can't honestly fault him for. It does bring up a nice segue for me though, because I've got a bone to pick with another driver who wasn't there but could have been. Interestingly, I was covering FP1 in one for not in Monaco sadly, but for the Monaco Grand Prix, and Jensen Button revealed that he'd received a few offers to compete in this year's Indy 500, but he turned them down because he didn't
hmm,
want to compete. And I kind of lost a little bit of respect for him there because why on earth would you not want to do that, even if you are just kind of being the gentleman driver or you're just going for it. And a crew child was saying, why? He was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do it. There's the age, da da da. And the crew's not having any of it. And he brings up Takuma Sato being 48 and sticking out a second ago. It's your excuse. You're a world champion.
How,
Um,
how old is
so
Jenson Button?
I think he's only in his mid 40s at most, to be
Okay.
honest. I'm going to double check this now, but he doesn't have an excuse for next year. And next year he could even do well, he's already won the Monaco Grand Prix, but he's 45.
45.
But the Indy 500 is on a separate date to the Monaco Grand Prix next year. It's obviously 24 hours Le Mans. He could go and do the Triple Crown if he really wanted to. So I don't know why he didn't do that. But so you mentioned your comment reminded me of that. Going, yeah, there's a guy that just loves pure racing, and there's the guy that you'd expect to be there for the love of pure racing,
Yeah.
and he's not even going.
Yeah. Yeah. Jack Harvey, uh, they've nicknamed Hollywood Harvey
Mm, I like
with
that.
his his time in the broadcast booth the first five races of the season. We've talked about him and his broadcasting career, and I think I'm looking forward to hearing from him more this season in the broadcast booth. I think he's doing great, but P19 probably would have hoped to have done a little bit better, but with the equipment that he
A
had,
decent
I
outing
think
too,
it's
I think.
yeah, yeah, I think that's probably better than what he could have finished. Ryan Hunter-Ray um, finishing 21st, led a whole bunch of laps, um,
Yeah,
which was
didn't have it on my
crazy.
bingo card.
No, he led 48 laps and um, definitely was another one of those drivers that, you know, during the midway point of the race, you're like, whoa, like, is this little team going to do it?
Yeah, it totally switched up on the thing there. You're thinking I was going to be Sato or one of these or Castro Neves even because he was getting nearer the front as the random one shot driver to take it to blow and then Captain America himself makes a comeback and you go how do what how
Well, that was a car that got rebuilt.
hmm.
Basically, they had the fire on Fast Friday and Carb
Yeah,
Day, and uh,
and like not even just
they,
like a little bit on fire, like
yeah,
properly on fire.
yeah, burned the car. And glad to see that he was safe, but that he had trouble getting out of the car.
Hmm.
If you watch the replay, I mean, it took at least twice, maybe even three times as long for a driver to get out of a car than what it should have. And I'm sure IndyCar's probably taking a look at that. But yeah, but 21st after rebuilding the car, I think they end up ultimately having a mechanical issue and having to leave the race. But Kyle Larson, if there was one driver that probably uh, was hoping to have a better day, it probably had the worst
Well,
day of based on what
and
his expectations for the day were.
I was
Finishing
going to say maybe,
24th.
maybe based on the expectations for this, there's Marco Andretti still to talk about. I don't know if he had the worst day.
Yeah, it's true.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the
Uh,
expectation with Kyle, oh yeah, I mean, it's a weird list he's on, obviously, isn't it? Because it's drivers that have attempted something. It's not even have done it.
mhm.
At this point, you're just on the list of
Yeah.
we tried. And both for both races on Sunday, it was just slim margins. And if you'd
Mhm.
just been a little bit more to the left or a little bit more to the right, completely different outcome would have happened there, and
Yeah. He
just didn't happen
just got
for him.
too low and got squirrely and collected up a couple other cars and then got to get to Charlotte on time and pretty much had the same issue there. So
So looked good for a bit. He obviously started in second and then led a bunch of laps and then just could have been slightly more to the left and then just gets tapped ever so slightly and you're
yeah.
done.
Yeah. And uh I'm wondering what the Netflix special is going to be like, how they are going to frame this, because uh, there were a lot of cameras following him around, and Netflix was working on a docu series
Hmm.
for this day. You know, running the double and going out there and trying to do what maybe only one other driver's ever done, and that's complete the 1,100 miles in one day. And now I don't, you're just gonna have a lot of B-roll footage to show, I guess, maybe.
It strikes me they're going to have the same issue that I think Amazon had back in 2017. They made a four-part documentary on McLaren F1's team, and it was, I think it was Alonso and Van Dorn back then. Obviously, it was in their Honda days, and
Right.
it was a trying 4 episodes where you can tell that the people behind the scenes are going, "What are we doing with this? Because this is oh
Why
yeah,
did we
how many
pick
different
that?
ways can we do this?"
Yeah. Yeah. And then last of the one-offs was Marco Andretti, finishing 29th, which um, you know, another
Finishing
driver.
is a generous word, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Kind of in the same boat as Scott McLaughlin, um,
Mm,
crashing, what was essentially the start of the race, but did complete 4 laps under caution and did see a green flag. So,
so I'm sure he'll sleep much better now because of that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, he finished where he started. So, 29th place.
Does that mean? And this is the transition I'm going for. Does that mean he's your hot driver for the weekend?
No, I'm not going to call him
No,
the
no,
hot
you're not going to
driver
go down
now.
those.
No, no. So, yeah, your takeaway of the
I'm gonna have
entire
to
weekend.
I'm gonna have to take AJ Foyt there because how could it not be? And he said
Yeah,
even if it was just one of the drivers combined, one of the drivers alone would have been enough for me to still name the team as the victors here, but they both did it, so how could it not be them?
yeah. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I have to go with Dave Malukas. Um, After
Finally
everything
came
that
through for
happened to
you.
him, last after last season, everything that happened with him, and uh, getting booted from a team and having to go through recovery and coming back in this way, I think is uh, vindicating for him. But also, Santino Ferrucci finishing fifth. Absolute stellar day for AJ Foyt Racing. Um, Not hot driver. I mean, that's got to be Scott McLaughlin. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was spoiled for choice here, and who could we
yeah,
choose? There were plenty of candidates, but yeah,
yeah. I mean, 1992 was the year I have it pulled up here that Roberto
mm.
Guerrero crashed on the parade lap. And so to
At
do
least he
something that
didn't do
hadn't
it from
been done
pole.
in 35 years, um, yeah. I mean,
That's usually the tagline that's used to get people to watch something, and then you go, "Oh, this isn't what we thought you were meaning with that."
yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, unfortunate for him. I think that was, he was the supposed to be the one driver at Penske that had the shot of winning. It turned out that it wasn't necessarily the case, but we never got to see what would have happened. So
Yeah, I went for PREMA in the end. I think. I mean, it was sport for choice, like you say, but then to have one driver go out spectacularly in a way that we knew he wouldn't do well, probably over the course of the race, but to then go out in such a fashion and then have your other driver just be kind of caught out because of the team messing around, then it really doesn't help, does it?
no, no. Hard luck. Who's your hard luck driver?
For Mark Andretti, simply because it's yet another time where the Andrettis are trying to do what their grandfather did and not managing that in a quicker and quicker fashion.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time picking a hard luck driver. Um, I I think if I had to pick one, and this is kind of gonna
And you
be
do.
off the wall, I think my hard luck driver is a driver who wasn't in the race, and that was Jacob
Fair.
Abel. With the penalties that happened to Penske during qualifying, and then Jacob Abel not getting, him being the 34th car on the outside looking in, and then having 3 more cars get relegated to the
Mm.
back. I mean, there were 5 cars that were caught cheating in air quotes. We'll preface that. Um, and him having to be the
Wash on the
one not making. I
sidelines.
mean, not saying that he had any kind of shot realistically to do
No, but you
well in
wouldn't
the
have seen the
race,
harm to
but
include him in that and just let him have a go.
yeah, and we talked. I think we talked mentioned that in the last episode was
Mm.
you know it's not necessarily unprecedented where they allow a, an extra car in. I know there's this mystique around having 33 cars, 11 rows of three in the 500. But it's not unprecedented where they will allow a 34th or 35th car, even in some cases, to run the
think
500.
I think if you'd had the 34th car there, you'd have him, and then just for the parade lap, you'd have two of the wiener wheels just on either side, and then they peel
Yeah.
off towards the end.
Yeah. Well, they can have those really cool helicopters they had on that
All
flyover as
that, yeah.
well. So, but yeah, I would say Jacob Abel. I think that's my hard luck driver. In the
Nice.
truest sense of why we have the hard luck award. Uh, you know, uh, Back in the 60s, they created an award called the Jigger Award, and that is essentially the hard luck award for the 500. There was a driver, his name was Jigger Suros, and during
That was
qualifying, he withdrew his qualified car to go out and try to get a better time and would have qualified solidly in the field. Withdrew his time to go out and qualify again, and then it
I
started
see where this is
raining,
going.
and he never got
Yep.
to qualify. It was the only time he ever came to the track to try to qualify, and or it was he came back several years afterwards to try to qualify and never was able to qualify. And
Oh,
so,
hilarious.
um, the Jigger Award is an award that they kind of tongue-in-cheek award that they give out from time to time, and that's where the hard luck award that really comes from. And so, yeah, I think in the truest sense of the Jigger Award, that would be Jacob Abel. So yeah, all in all, I think it was just a goofy race, and quite honestly, one that I think is, unfortunately for Alex Palou in his first oval win and first 500 win, is maybe a forgettable 500.
I don't think it will be forgettable, but I just don't think it'll be remembered for by some people for the right reasons, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it will be.
It's
It
not a
wasn't
classic.
the. It's definitely not a classic, other than maybe for the wrong reasons. I
Mhm.
think the replay of Scott McLaughlin crashing on the formation lap is a replay that they're going to,
And so there's
knowing
a lot
that,
of somewhat iconic moments, but again,
you
the
know,
wrong reasons.
every year around the beginning of May, YouTube starts recommending, you know,
Yeah,
500 clips to me, and the Roberto Guerrero clip of him crashing on the parade lap is generally one of those that always comes up. And now Scott McLaughlin's going to have to live with that forever now. So,
there's a new version.
yes. Um, so one of the unique things that we get with the Indy 500 is the victory banquet, which I don't know of any other races in the world
Monaco
throughout the years.
has a dinner afterwards, but it's more just for the winner. And,
Yeah,
and yes, that sort of thing. It's closest I can think of.
yeah, and this year here in America, we did get a national broadcast of the victory banquet, which is unique. I think in years past when NBC had it, it was just a local thing here in Indianapolis that we got to see every year. But now more people get to enjoy it, and it's a really unique opportunity to it's the day after the 500. The drivers have had a chance to decompress after a really stressful month and kind of you get to see the true driver, the true personality of the driver. They're not at the track anymore. They're not wearing a fire suit. They're not they're not freshly out of a car going 225 miles per hour. And so you really kind of get to see personalities of the drivers shine through. And obviously there are some bigger personalities in this series than others. And you can definitely tell there are some drivers that um, are not comfortable wearing a suit and getting up in front of a banquet hall full of people to talk.
They
Um,
prefer being Batman than Bruce Wayne.
yes. Um, they when they do the banquet, they go in descending order. So um, Doug Bowles did get up before the the banquet began in earnest and say, listen, we had three drivers that had to go to the back of the field. we're not necessarily here to talk about that tonight. We're here to celebrate all the drivers. Um, and we're going to talk to these three drivers first. So,
Just so
um,
happens that
I watched the whole broadcast last night and or Monday night and um, was jotted down some notes from interviews. Um, I think well, you've got them pulled up there as well. I think on your end, but
yeah,
um, Marcus Ericsson was asked um, about their team penalty that both him and Kirkwood ended up receiving, and really didn't have a whole lot to say about it. I think other than that the team is reviewing the penalties. It's certainly not. Um, I would say unprecedented for the running order to change after they've posted the finishing order.
yeah.
And there is a possibility that any one of these three disqualified drivers that were relegated to the back of the field can have their penalty overturned.
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember the last time that a 500 penalty was contested. The one that comes to mind was the finish of the 1982 500, where uh, Gordon Johncock was eventually named the winner over Mario Andretti. Um, and funnily enough, uh, funny enough, Mario never gave back his winning ring, his victory ring, and his trophy from that race. So, um, but yeah, so I mean, there's a possibility that Andretti can go through the proper channels and fight that penalty, and and
I mean,
we might see
luckily, it ultimately doesn't change much because of the. It's not going to change the winning outcome of it, which I think is
correct,
probably
yeah,
for the best in this instance.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Had he won, Ericsson won, that would have been this would have been a big deal, a huge deal. So, even more detrimental to the sport than I think we've already hashed
Hmm.
out. So, Renus VK, which in my notes we have his actual name on here.
Oh yes,
So,
it's a bit
uh,
more of a mouthful.
yeah. Yeah. For those who don't know, Renus VK is a acronym. It's the initials for Van Kalmthot.
Which does make him sound like a an interesting Bond villain from like the 80s.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, he spun in the pits, had front brake failure, which mm, okay, I'll allow him to escape with that. But um, Robert Schwartzman finishing 26th, obviously our rookie of the year, sitting on the pole. Um, Interesting, I did not know this. He is a music artist.
Yeah, I saw this note and it woke up a random memory from 4 years ago. And you see this occasionally with the racing drivers that some of them decide they're going to go into a different avenue. And I think I heard that at the time, and no, you do you. Not my cup of tea, but you do you.
Yeah, they used one of his songs as his walk-up music, and I can say it did not catch me as or strike me as especially catchy. I didn't hear it and be like, "Ooh, who's this artist?" So, I mean,
You didn't
great.
recognize those dulcet tones from Team Radio.
But kudos for him. Kiffin Simpson, in his interview on stage, he mentioned he felt a lot more comfortable in traffic this year, and being able to pass in traffic, which is exactly what you want to hear from a second year driver. Uh, it's uh, I think that shows that he's maturing as a driver. I think we all kind of looked at it, at the beginning of the season, we said Chip Ganassi going from 5 cars to three, and you're like, this is one of the drivers that you kept. And
Yeah, remember
I think maybe Chip saw something that we didn't see. Uh,
it seems to
uh,
be. kind of it's a long-term project, and I think it's good to see that kind of investment in the drivers like that because we see so much chopping and changing throughout motorsport a lot of the time, and then the results don't come anyway. So I'm like, well, at least invest and see what happens, you know,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
just for the sake of variety, if nothing else.
that's right. I mean, obviously, Kevin Simpson brings a lot of money to the team, and I'm not going as far as saying that he's a paid driver, but the coming from the Cayman Islands doesn't give you the best optic when it comes to are you a paid
You
driver or
said it,
not?
not me.
Yeah. Kyle Larson, obviously very disappointing month, trying to complete the double. This was his last shot for a while. They are not his NASCAR team's not going to allow him to come back next year and try it for a third time in a row. But he
All I'll
did.
say is there's a lot that can change in a year. You
Yeah,
never know
that's
what's going
true.
to happen.
Yeah. Um, I highly doubt that Hendrick Motorsport's going to let him go at the end of the season while he's, you know, doing so
I
well in
rule nothing
NASCAR.
out.
But he did say that he hopes to come back later in his career. I think as maybe he starts entering the twilight years, maybe we see him come back and try to do the double again with some smaller teams. So Ed Carpenter, this was his 22nd consecutive Indy 500 that he's started.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, he's, him and I are the same age, both 44 years old. And I think with, you know, the amount of money that that family received from selling the Speedway to Roger Penske, I
Hmm.
think we probably, he'll realistically make it to 30 consecutive starts.
I'm up for it. I mean, he
Yeah.
didn't take anything away from the race. He did perform pretty well, considering he's there, kind of like as you say, as a gentleman driver. So yeah, why not? As long
Yeah.
as he's got the speed, bring it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Nolan Siegel, we finally got to hear from him. I think, being kind of left out of the end of the broadcast of the race, but he said he'd gotten to the marbles there in turn two, um, but he was happy that the TV coverage missed it.
I mean, the only person that was, I think, because we're all scratching heads wondering what on earth's going on and why they're not cutting to it. It must be something
Yeah,
serious.
yeah. Louis Foster, talked about he had two drive-through penalties that he had to serve during the race, but still managed to finish on the lead lap. And you
It's
know,
again why I think it'd be so frustrating for him to miss out on the Rookie of the Year award because he's
yeah,
doing all these kind of quietly impressive things and no one's taking
yeah.
notice.
I think the biggest highlight from the banquet though was Connor Daly. Obviously, always a fan favorite, but also a man with a gift
Moment.
of gab. And uh, he said that this was his best shot to win. It's the best ever 500 finish for Juncos Hollinger Racing. But the big takeaway from his speech was he did have to relieve himself in the car before the race.
So before the race even started, never mind once it
Yeah,
got going.
yeah,
Which,
and
as I said to you beforehand, before we started recording the episode, I just loved how kind of unique that seemed to be to both him and everyone watching. And meanwhile, I'm over here going, yeah, we kind of get more of this sort of thing. It's not uncommon, and it's just kind of the oh my god, guys, guess what I did? Guess what I did? And we're just like, what? And then he says, "I'm like, oh, is that it? We've been doing that for ages. What you want about?"
yeah, and Connor he led 13 laps, and we talked about him being the hometown boy, and I'm sure we'll see Connor back next year. I don't see a scenario where we don't see Connor Daly
Yeah,
back in the
yeah,
500 for years to come, especially when your stepdad is Duck Bowles. So
it helps.
it helps. Um, uh, Two drivers that kind of interviewed together, Christian Rasmussen and Christian Lundgaard. Interesting enough, they finished in this order last year as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I definitely didn't have that on my bingo card either, and slightly more impressed from Rasmussen considering Lundgaard's in the McLaren this year.
yes, yeah. Um, Now they mentioned, they grew up together racing go-karts, and now they live next door to each other here in Indianapolis. I'm like, talk about, being best friends on and off the track. So, um, Santino Ferrucci, who, you know, we we talked about how it was, really not necessarily a surprise that he finished in the top five.
Hmm.
But he has never finished outside the top 10 at the 500. The streak continues. And I think this is probably one of the more impressive stat lines
It's a definitely an
in
underrated
this year.
statistic there that I didn't
And
know about him.
yeah, so, to add a fifth place finish onto that stat line, it's almost like the yellow flag run that we had or caution free
Hmm.
run that we had
Hmm.
earlier this year. It's like when is he not going to finish in the top 10? When is it going to be? When's that going to happen?
Hopefully not for many,
So
many years to come.
yeah, we've got a whole other year to wait at this point. So um, um David Malukas, like we mentioned, he feels vindicated after missing out on last year's 500. Um, Last year, I did not know this. Last year, he actually watched the race from the grandstands. Like,
So
how,
seeing that just made me think, does this mean we've got Jacob Abel top five next year?
yeah, right? Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Um, so he felt really good about his chances of winning after lap 100, and he knew that he had a car that was going to be able to be up
Hmm.
front. So, and then of course, Alex Palou, first Spaniard to win the 500, which that was kind of interesting. I'm kind of thinking back to other Spaniards. I'm like, oh gosh, who else would have been there
It's
that would
another thing
have those?
Fernando Alonso doesn't
Yeah,
have.
that's right. Yeah, that was the name that came to mind for me. So this was Chip Ganassi's sixth 500 win, 141 total wins spanning 35 years for that team, and um, you know, obviously he's going to rack up some more wins this season on that 141 win total,
Imagine
I'm
if he
sure.
doesn't.
I'm trying to imagine that, but I
It's just
don't
not
think
happening
that
yet.
that I think he's probably going to get one or two more in there.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
so
trying, people. I'm
uh,
trying.
total purse for this 500 was over $20 million. Typically, they'll announce how much the drivers make each driver makes, and they didn't do that this year, but we know the total. So I'm sure that Alex Palou took home a record amount as well. So
Yes, I'm
um,
sure.
yeah, so but yeah, I mean we've get a little bit of a reprieve. 3 days now before we have our next race.
And so we're on it.
The
We're on it for all the next 3 weeks now. It's relentless.
Yeah, we've got the Grand Prix of Detroit coming up this weekend,
With
according to
its
the
unique pit
countdown.
lane.
Yes, very unique. And uh, I was a little disappointed when they left Belle Isle, but
Hmm.
the the uh,
I've enjoyed
the
Detroit though, to be
I
honest, with the
have
races I've seen
enjoyed
from there.
Detroit. Yeah.
So
So, but we'll be back next week to cover that race. I think that pretty much wraps up the month of May. It's been a
been a
weird
long
one.
one.
Been a weird long one, yes. But we'll be back next week to cover that Detroit Grand Prix. And in the meantime, we will see everyone later.